Good afternoon, everybody. It's good to see so many on the call. Begin, of course, with acknowledgement that the University of Regina is here on Treaty 4, land in Regina, and Treaty 6 in Saskatoon. Tremendously important part of our future, even more important part, of our past and an even more important part of our future. We have got a wonderful lineup of colleagues today who are going to speak to us on a variety of topics, all associated with health, safety, and wellness. And I want to allow maximum time for them, so I'm going to keep this introduction very, very brief. Apart from welcoming you and assuring you that we will continue these town halls at roughly 3 weekly intervals throughout the term, it's a privilege now to invite the first speakers from the Faculty of Kinesiology and Health Studies, our Director of Athletics, Lisa Robertson, and our Dean, Harold Reamer. Please go ahead.
I'll start off. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Lisa Robertson. So I'm going to run through how we have provided a safe return to sport and training on campus, and how we built protocols and then flexed based on public health orders. So I'll kind of go through some stuff chronologically, but I want to start by saying from the outset, we have a group of professionals and experts in their field that I work with on a daily basis, and they sit under what we call our athlete health, wellness, and performance initiative. We have an operations team that helps guide these programs, and on that we have physiotherapists, we have athletic therapists, we have a sport doctor, we have our strength and conditioning trainer, we have the head clinician for our Center for Health, Wellness, and Performance, which would have been known as Dr. Paul Schwann in the past. And we started meeting probably early in the summer, last summer, to talk about return to campus and to create some protocols and seek some approvals to come back on campus for the student athletes. At that point, there was still the potential that there would be a season in the fall. Obviously, as we progressed, our conferences ended up canceling seasons, but we started off with the mindset of either meeting or exceeding the current public health guidelines, as well as trying to base as many of our decisions on what was at the time the best science available. And again, we had to flex a lot because a lot changed, as you know, with COVID over time. I met a lot with the BRT in the summer, which is the business, it's either the business return team or business recovery team. I can never remember. It's under the Ministry of Immigration and Career Training. They have been tasked with executing the public health orders on behalf of the government. Also met with Darren Cherwadi a lot and leaned on him a lot. So we built what I would say were protocols that well exceeded the guidelines, and we started back in mid-July. We had small group training and only outside in groups of 8 or less. At that point in time, group sizes were allowed to be larger. We also made masking mandatory, even outside. And again, that was not within the public health orders at the time. And at that time, we also asked that our student athletes and trainers stay 2 meters distanced. So that was kind of mid-July to the beginning of September. Things started to open up a little bit more. We got permission to return inside into campus. We opened our high performance center, which is where our athletes do their strength and conditioning. And we opened our FLC for our student athletes. At that point, masking was still mandatory. We increased the distancing to 3 meters because at the time, the science was showing that high respiratory activity caused particulate to travel further. So we increased the distancing and set up our facilities to match that. And then in those facilities, specifically the High Performance Center, because it's a smaller facility than the FLC, FM helped us switch to more outdoor airflow coming in. We had a maximum of 10 athletes in the High Performance Center and a maximum of 5 in the FLC. Normally, just as a reference, we would normally have 30 athletes in our High Performance Center. We decreased it to 10, again, maintaining the 3 meters. Mid-September, we opened up to full practices. Again, masked. We were the only team in Canada West, actually, that I knew of actually in the country at the time, that came back insisting on masking. I purchased 2 different types of high performance masks for our student athletes, and they had to mask in order to return. The exception being our aquatic activities. They had to mask while getting ready to go into the pool, but they did not obviously have to mask in the pool. At this point, they were training off campus. We didn't have our pool open yet. We rolled through a very successful fall. We had 6 positive COVID cases. We had no team-to-team transmission, and those student athletes who tested positive, they were traced to community transfer and nothing on campus and nothing to do with our sport activity. December 11th, I made the very difficult decision to actually shut down all of our activities. And I did that because I wanted to create a buffer going into the holidays. At that point, if you tested positive or if you were a close contact, you had to self-isolate for 2 weeks. I didn't want any of our staff or our students being stuck in self-isolation through the holidays. So we shut down. December 14th, the province came down with the current public health restrictions, which precludes our student athletes who are 19 years and over from training. They have been put in the category of adult sport and adult recreation sport. So we literally 3 days after I shut down, the province in essence shut us down. Student athletes went away for the holidays. They obviously came back for after Christmas. We had about 200 student athletes training in the fall semester. We have about 113 back training now, which is indicative of us not being able to do practices. Lots of student athletes are waiting to come back. We do have our high performance center open. We opened it on January 11th. Again, we're exceeding the guidelines. We have, they are allowed to work out in their strength and conditioning, even though they're not allowed to practice. Currently, we have 5 student athletes in the large high performance area. And over the holidays, we converted a section next to the high performance center to allow for 3 in there. So we're now down to 8, 3 meters distanced, masked. And then again, some new science has come out around that CO2 detection. The amount of CO2 in the air is a good indicator of what the potential, if there was virus in the air, what the potential for the amount of virus in the air. So we now have a CO2 detector in our high performance center, and we are tracking well below anything that would be of concern. We also have outdoor airflow, which made for a very cold week last week for our student athletes in there. I saw lots of toques. So, and then just finally wrapping up, on Monday, we will have our 18 and unders back training in small groups, again, under the current public health orders. Athletes 18 and under can train. It has to be socially distanced. It's only skill development, masked, 3 meters. And currently we'll have our women's volleyball. We have 4 women's volleyball coming back, 4 women's basketball, 4 swimmers, and 4 women's hockey. We'll start training under the current health orders, doing sport specific distanced training with their coaches. So I think we've done a successful job. It has been a lot of work. We flexed all the time. I'm not even sure what version of our protocols we're on. They get updated and sent out directly to coaches and student athletes as we need to flex. So I'll leave it at that, and I'll pass on to our dean, Dr. Reamer, and I think he will speak to the FLC opening.
Okay, there we go. Thanks, Lisa. So what I'm going to do is really quickly run through the programs and activities or opportunities that we've introduced at the beginning of this last semester that are focused on health and well-being. So we are running UR-Fit classes. There's a wide variety of those, from yoga classes to pound classes. I have no idea what that actually means, but anyway, that's what they're called. And those are being delivered in person. They're being delivered virtually, so either recorded or live streamed or both. The FLC is reopened. The Aquatic Center reopened for lane swimming and some aquatic exercise classes or aquacise classes. We're providing recreation opportunities. Some of those are virtual. So for example, the workout challenge that you can find on Instagram, e-gaming challenges, which are very, very popular, or some outdoor recreation activities. We have actually an outdoor rink on campus now, and snowshoeing happens this weekend, and some geocaching is going on. And then finally, there's a wellness speaker series that's going to begin in February. Now, from a safety perspective, very quickly, indoor activities are restricted in the following way. First of all, everyone has to pre-register. You can only come at your registered time slot. There will be a maximum of 8 people in the FLC at any given time, or in the UR-Fit classes, a maximum of 6 people if they're involved in lane swimming. Traffic is all one way. People are assigned a specific location, either in the class or in the FLC. You can't move around in the space.
Harold, if I may interrupt for a second, I think you're rubbing your papers on your laptop, which is giving us a real scratchy sound on the built-in microphone. So if you can keep the paperwork off the laptop, thank you.
I'll try that, thanks. And then, as Lisa mentioned, mask usage for all recreational activities, indoor or out, is required. On the outside outdoor activities, it's very similar. Pre-registration, maximum of 10 outdoors because of those are the health guidelines. Social distancing, obviously, masks in place. And if you're interested in finding out more, you can check out our You Are All Connected social media sites, in particular the Instagram, which is really targeted at students, is a great place to find out what's going on. So thanks.
Harold and Lisa, thanks so much. And thanks for all the work that you're putting into things at that end of campus. It's huge, it's complex, it involves so many different parties with Canada West and health and safety, and I just want to express my appreciation to you both. Folks, we'll hold questions to the end. I see there's a question from Britt in the text, if anybody'd like to answer that, but we'll hold the verbals until everybody's had a chance to present. And I'd ask now Tom McIntosh, who is from SFIRU and Politics and International Studies, to tell us a little bit about a SFIRU report that was just released. Tom, over to you.
Thank you. Just a bit of background on the research brief we released this week. I sent out over a couple of the listservs links to both the report and to a series of infographics that we've developed from this. Where this comes from, the Mental Health Research Canada commissioned Polara Research, one of the national polling firms, to do a national survey on mental health and COVID. And the Sask Health Research Foundation actually contributed some money to this to have an oversample of Saskatchewan done, because usually in national surveys, you can't pull out the Saskatchewan data. The sample's too small from Saskatchewan for it to be in any way significant. So we oversampled Saskatchewan, and then SHRF turned the data eventually over to us in December, and we've put together a bit of a research brief. This is the document itself. I won't go through the methodology. I'm sure that doesn't interest anybody except the statistical people around. You need to remember and keep in mind that this survey was done in August, so 6 months into the pandemic. 20% of Saskatchewan residents saying they had experienced periods of high levels of anxiety. What was it? And 15% saying they had experienced a high level of depression since COVID. That's only 6 months in before the second wave hits us and we start seeing a massive increase in cases. And then we've broken it down by gender, by some regional variation. I'll say a bit more about that in a sec. Regina and the North seem to be feeling the biggest mental health impacts. But the report it's written in a nice, accessible language, I think, for the most part. It's only 7 or 8 pages, and then there's a half dozen or so infographics that go along with it if you want to use it in classes, in conversations, sharing it with whoever you want to share it with. These are, as far as we're concerned, public documents. The one thing I would say is right now, this gives us a snapshot of the first 6 months. Polara is back in the field with the next wave, and SHRF and Sphero have agreed to again underwrite the cost out of our piggy banks for an oversample of Saskatchewan. So we'll be getting that data hopefully in a few weeks, and we can start in on an updated brief that'll give us some now time series data. And there'll be a third wave in the spring that we're also going to contribute with. And we're thinking about trying to see if we can use our contacts with NITHA, the Northern Intertribal Health Authority, and to cooperate with them to oversample northern residents so that we get a much clearer picture of what's going on in the north. There's a lot of back and forth that will have to go on for that to work, but we'll see if we can make it work. And then finally, the last couple things I'd say, if you go to the Sphero website, which is simply sphero.ca, you'll also see the results from the Social Contours study, which is an online rolling survey around COVID responses in Saskatchewan. And we're also about to launch some work, including some survey work, I believe, on the impact of COVID on the mental health of children in the province of Saskatchewan. So there's going to be, if you stay abreast of the website, there'll be a sort of series of reports coming down over the next number of months, exploring different aspects of mental health and COVID. So that's it for me. I await questions afterwards.
Thank you, Tom, very much. And I want to acknowledge, I believe 2 of your co-authors are on the call.
Oh,
Bonnie Jeffrey up in PA, and Noel is on the call here in Regina, I believe. So just acknowledgement to the 3 of you, and thank you for that overview. And I think a link has already been posted. And as Tom says, he's prepared to answer questions once we finish the speakers. So thanks again, Tom. Over now to Kevin Boland in Student Affairs to speak to us briefly about counseling services and particularly services for students. Kevin.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Chase. You can all hear me?
Yes.
So I'm going to just review briefly kind of the mandate that we've got within student counseling services. Obviously, mental health is an important component of student success. And as such, we strive to be responsive, engaging, and preventative in our services. We have 5 clinicians, all registered psychologists with extensive experience in treating a wide variety of mental health concerns. We deliver services in conjunction with the Canadian Code of Ethics for Psychologists, and information shared is of course confidential, including the fact that a student has come for counseling. Personal health information is not disclosed to university faculty, staff, parents, or other persons and agencies without written permission. So we do have a link on our counseling services page and the Mental Wellness Hub for faculty and instructors to make referrals of students to counseling services, and I'll show you that link shortly. The approach that's taken by Dr. Jenny Keller and her team is a stepped care delivery model, which is being modeled throughout North America, based on the work of Dr. Peter Cornish out of Memorial University of Newfoundland. Jenny and her team have become some of the foremost experts in single session therapy and stepped care delivery in the country. Jenny and her team are sought out by many other post-secondary institutions for the work that they're doing here at the University of Regina. Since March 16th, 2020, we've been providing counseling services via Zoom Healthcare. This does require the student to complete a brief informed consent document. And once submitted to a psychologist, we follow up literally within the next day to determine an appropriate course of action. This is an unparalleled turnaround in the community. So again, I would like to give compliments to our team for the quick turnaround that we provide. In some cases, a student presents with issues that may not be well suited to e-counseling. And in that case, we will make referrals, alternatives are provided. Perhaps one of the most recent things we've done is we've reached out to the Saskatchewan Health Authority to ensure that we've got a connection to make appropriate psychiatric referrals because we are not able to provide that service on campus. The step care delivery model takes a very goal-oriented approach with students based on the principles of acceptance and commitment therapy. Essentially, what we're talking about there is problem solving for students. We don't necessarily want to have a student come see us every week for the next 4 years. What we want to do is work on working through challenges with those students to make them more resilient, to make them more hardy in their studies. And as such, again, we take the step care approach because in some cases it may not require one-on-one therapy. In other cases, there may be more effective modalities in serving an individual student. I would be remiss without mentioning the U of R Mental Wellness Hub, and a ton of work has gone into this. I want to give compliments to Rob McCaffrey out of Health, Safety and Wellness and Human Resources, Darren Sherwadi as well, the director, Maureen Klink out of the Nursing Student Wellness Clinic, and then of course, Dr. Jenny Keller and her team. Of late, we've been participating in Healthy Campus Saskatchewan. That is a conglomeration of 19 post-secondary institutions in the province. We've received funding from Advanced Education, and what we're trying to do is determine best practices not only regionally, but also a national standards document as well. And we've been participating in that initiative as well. We are about to send out a Canadian Campus Wellbeing Survey to all of our students to inform our best practices and how we go about doing business moving forward. Of note, we were recently featured in a Toronto Star article, and we actually had the largest percentage increase of funding dedicated to counseling services out of any participating institution in the survey. So out of 25 participating post-secondary institutions in Canada, we had the largest funding increase for counseling services in the 2015 to 2020 period. We went from 2 FTE psychologists to 5 FTE psychologists. Since March 2020, on average, Jenny and her team have seen about 90 to 100 appointments a week. And perhaps of greater concern is the fact that we're typically adding about 25 new clients per week. So obviously we need to take a very practical approach to service delivery, and thus the step care delivery model allows us to have the most efficacy in reaching the greatest number of students and having the greatest impact on their success here at the university. So I think I'll leave it at that for now, Dr. Chase, but thank you.
Kevin, thank you, and please convey the campus's thanks to Jenny and everyone working in that area. It's just an essential service, and we know the caseload is very high. So thanks to you and everyone down there. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Going to introduce Dr. Heather Haji-Stavropoulos. Heather's a psychologist, of course, in our Department of Psychology, but she is the prime mover behind a really wonderful and related effort called the Online Therapy Unit. So Heather, if you would.
Yeah, thank you so much. And hello, everybody. As you know, mental health problems are highly prevalent and also disabling, but unfortunately getting care is difficult. About 10 years ago, I became very interested in trying to figure out how to get clients a specific form of care, which is called cognitive behavior therapy. And it's a highly effective form of treatment. So I was really interested in how we could deliver this online. We formed the Online Therapy Unit based at the University of Regina, and we had a lot of success. And so now we're funded by the government to provide a free service to Saskatchewan residents. Basically, what online therapy does is it creates an online course, and we try and share what would normally be shared in face-to-face treatment online. in the form of a five lesson course over 8 weeks. And we pair that up with therapist support, which clients can access to the extent that they want for a period of 8 weeks. Basically, we're taking those normal messages and things that we know are effective face-to-face and putting them online. We've done a lot of research on this and are getting very, very good results. So we are currently offering 4 different types of treatment. So one is a well-being course, which would be very appropriate for anybody who has depression or anxiety or stress related to COVID-19. We also have a course that's specifically tailored to meet the needs of university students, one for individuals who have chronic health conditions, and then one that's focused on helping clients who might have difficulties with alcohol use or those people who might be considered sober curious. If you're interested or you know somebody who might be, you can visit our website. The basic process is that you complete an assessment package online. That's followed up with a telephone interview. And if the service isn't a good fit for you, we would refer you to other services. Assuming it is, you start on a weekly course with materials distributed over the 8-week period, and you're attached to a registered clinician. I should mention that I don't do the treatment. I oversee the clinic, but if you were to come, you could be seen by somebody without me ever knowing it. At the end of this, we invite clients to complete outcome measures at 8 weeks and 3-month follow-up, and this serves to continually improve our services. If you were to come, you wouldn't be alone. We've had a lot of use of this service. It's grown every year since we opened. Last year, we worked with 2,600 clients, or about 50 new clients per week, and a wide variety of clients. And it's free for anybody in Saskatchewan, so not just Regina. And it's also appropriate for clients with various symptom levels. So for instance, 30% of our clients would actually report suicidal ideation, and 37% would be considered in the severe range. So please, if you're interested, do reach out. You can find out lots of information online at www.onlinetherapyuser.ca. We like to say that we're therapy that never sleeps, or we're therapy that comes to you. Thank you.
Heather, thanks so much. And again, congratulations to you and your team and your graduate students for what is a really remarkable outreach from the university to the provincial community. And believe me, it is being noticed. So thank you so much.
Yes, you're most welcome.
Okay, we'll move now to facilities management. Pat Patton is going to speak to us about all the incredible work being done by staff in FM to keep campus safe. And Pat, over to you.
Thanks very much, Dr. Chase. Hello, everyone. Hope you're all doing well. I am just going to give you a bit of a brief outlook on some of the work that is being done by the great team at Facilities Management on campus, and in particular with regards to COVID safety. So our business continuity planning has continued for each unit within FM and has been updated with regard to specific COVID issues in mind. We've worked very closely with our service providers like contractors and consultants on maintaining and constantly improving our safe work practices on campus. Of course, our fantastic custodial team have been front and center with increased cleaning of all areas and with extra focus on touch points. They've begun using newer technology like electrostatic spraying to help keep our campus clean and disinfected. And I should also have mentioned at the beginning that most of our FM staff have remained on campus throughout the pandemic period. Security and the heating plant continue their consistent 24-hour service, regardless of the lack of students or staff, trying to maintain a warm, secure, and safe campus environment for those that remain on campus. Our maintenance colleagues have stepped up their efforts to work on work orders in areas where they can't normally work in certain areas. So along with our colleagues in planning, design, and construction, they've worked on some projects like lecture theater floor replacements, lighting upgrades, dark hall, kinesiology roof replacement, and planning with regards to some upcoming projects like education foundation work and the sustainability master plan. Now, a little bit more specific to COVID response, we worked a lot with some consultants to identify and map out classroom sizes and provide IPCAT with the information for class selection. Moving forward, we'll develop some guidelines for evaluation of admin offices and explore macro views of what campus capacity can and should be based on current and post-COVID trends. Our maintenance team worked to ensure that ventilation is at the highest but most efficient levels to minimize COVID transmission opportunities. We continue consultation with our staff on areas of concern for them and look for opportunities for improved student and staff safety. With the help of our colleagues at Residence Life, we've hired students to help us staff access points to only allow access to our campus for our students, staff, faculty, and necessary contractors. I want to thank everyone for your cooperation in all of these efforts, and thanks to our FM team for their efforts in keeping a safe and secure campus environment. Back to you, Dr. Chase.
Pat, thanks very much for that quick summary of a lot of incredible work being done in every area of this campus by the 200 plus staff members in FM. So on our behalf, thank you. Neil, I know you're on the call. Thanks to you and the entire team in FM. The place has never looked better, in part because we've finally been able to get all of this work done since the place is virtually empty most of the time. But thank you so much for everything there. We'll move now to Jim Darcy, our registrar, and Jim's just going to explain how he and his team are managing to keep numbers down on campus, all of the variables that they're taking into account to ensure that the density of people on campus, even with limited in-person offerings, is very low. Jim, if you would. I think you might be muted, Jim.
Just took my, yeah, I realized I was still on mute. Further to what Pat was just talking about having classrooms assessed, we have been having, working with Pat and her team having the classrooms assessed for physical distancing capacity. And as these proposals flow through IPCAT, our role in the registrar's office is to map this out to make sure that the flow throughout buildings, day of week, and time slots do not create any congestion throughout the buildings with our on-site course offerings. So I've just prepared a little summary here. We have on and off-site offerings. The off-site offerings, I'll just mention, are primarily at the regional colleges and Gabriel Dumont Institute. They have their own physical distancing protocols in place, and IPCAT reviews those just to make sure that they're, in compliance and that we are satisfied that they are following public health orders. As far as on-site goes, you can see that we have throughout the week 1,103 students potentially on campus throughout the week, and that's just distributed quite evenly Monday through Thursday and a little bit less on Fridays. Tuesdays and Thursdays being the largest impact on campus, with just over 260 students on campus each day. And I'm just going to click into Tuesday so you can see how we kind of monitor this. And we have had to make a couple of adjustments. I will happily say that those adjustments have been quite minor. We've only had to adjust 2 classes, one by a start time of 15 minutes to start earlier 15 minutes, and one to start later by 15 minutes. And that was just to make sure there was no congestion on a certain floor in a certain building. This shows you, this is the start time on the left-hand side, and on the top is the end time of the class. And so once we start plotting this all in, I use these pivot tables to monitor the flow in buildings, and I just wanted to show you an example of how the flow is on Tuesdays. You can see there's multiple buildings, multiple time start and end times, and that's pretty much what we're monitoring for. And I would think that would be all I have to say about how we're building the timetable. I think coming up, spring, summer looks like it's going to be a lot lower, and primarily in May and June with students on campus. But fall, we don't know what that looks like yet, and maybe present a little bit more challenge for us to schedule, but we'll see.
So Jim, thank you to you and your team. I think everyone on the call can see how incredibly complex this work is to ensure that at any given time, on any given floor, and any given building on campus, we do not have too high a density of people in the hallways and the washrooms and so on. And Jim, thank you. It's incredible work, and we really deeply appreciate it. Thanks so much. The final speaker, I believe, is Andrew Cameron, well known to the group. Andrew is chair of the University Recovery Planning Group. And just asked Andrew, who of course works in the field and knows the virus intimately, to give us a quick overview of where the state of the pandemic and the next couple of months is as he looks out across the province, the country, and the world. So over to you, Andrew.
Good afternoon, and thank you, President Chase. I know we'd like to end on a high, happy note on this Friday afternoon. So I'll start with some good news that vaccines work. Vaccines are being distributed across Canada, and more types of vaccines are being approved almost weekly at this point globally. And certainly new vaccines will be very likely approved in Canada soon. So that's all good news, because that just means more and more vaccines available, and rollout becomes more and more efficient and effective. It appears that the number of infections across Canada are slowly declining, but they are persistently high, especially considering how long restrictions have been in place. So that is concerning. We do still have high infection rates. And even more concerning is that Saskatchewan still ranks #1 in Canada for the rate of infection. Another interesting trend that has just started to materialize is concerning public health officials across Canada, is that there seems to be, with the rollout of the vaccines, there's a corresponding decline in the number of people who are seeking testing for COVID. And that's very concerning. So testing rates falling across Canada, and that's concerning to public health, because testing is required to survey what is the state of the pandemic in Canada across our communities. And so with less data, we get less sense of what's happening, and really that testing is needed as well to identify outbreaks and do the contact tracing. So as all of these things have got better across Canada, we're now facing a trend of losing some of the power of those effective tools and interventions. Further to that, it's through that type of testing and surveillance that we learn about the variants. So we can't track the variants and their spread across Canada without people seeking testing. Another interesting new note that's coming to light is that surveys of seroprevalence, which is a test for antibodies in people's blood to see if a person has ever been exposed to the virus. Those studies across Canada suggest that the exposure rate is still very low in our population as a whole, which tells us that if we were to rely on natural infection to try to achieve immunity and ultimately herd immunity, it would take a long, long time. And so this is good news from the perspective that there's still infection rates are much lower than they could be if we were letting the virus spread unchecked, and that vaccines really remain such a great tool. They are key to stopping this pandemic, and we want to stop it now while we still have the opportunity to prevent the further diversification and more variants and more mortalities. And so I think I'll just wrap up by saying that we are being just assaulted with news at the moment. There's just so much noise that it makes it very hard I'm not going to speculate what it's going to look like in 2 months at this point, except to say that even I learned in a meeting earlier today that there's been over 80,000 peer-reviewed publications on COVID-19 in the past year. And so there's so much information out there. But the things that remain consistently true is that even after vaccination, masking and distancing remain just key to stopping the pandemic, that the virus is still very predictable in how it behaves and how it needs to find new susceptible individuals. And the other great piece of news is that there's just growing evidence that even after natural infection or vaccination, that immunity is strong, and all the correlates suggest that it will be protective for an extended period. We don't know how long that's going to be, but there is good news. So we all just have to keep working hard to do our bit to stop this pandemic. And with that, I will finish up. Thanks.
Thanks, Andrew, for that overview. We're going to move to questions in just a moment. I do want to say thanks to you, Andrew, again, and to University of Regina scientists and social scientists. You've heard a little bit about social science research into the effects of COVID on the population. Andrew, of course, is working on the virus. And some of you will have heard this morning on CBC Local Radio a good segment with our alumnus, Nevin Krogan, a graduate of the University of Regina, who's gone on to an incredibly distinguished career, leading a major team based at the University of California in San Francisco, working in the field of addressing COVID. So the University of Regina contributions to research are notable. And as you've just heard, across campus, teams of people in every area of the operations are working their butts off to keep people safe, to try to ascertain the best next steps as we work our way through the pandemic, and indeed to try to keep spirits up at a difficult time and a challenging time for many people in the campus population and in the community generally. So thank you to each and every one of the speakers. Thank you to each and every one of the people on the call for everything that you individually and collectively are doing. And with that, I'm happy to try to moderate some questions. If you could perhaps raise your hand electronically, and I'll see if I can manage this. If not, someone will help me manage it. And direct your question to any one of the speakers, or just generally, if there's something you'd like to say, please go ahead. Floor is open.
Tom, you could perhaps start with the question from Peter Levitt and Jim's got an answer ready for it.
Okay, the question from Peter, can everyone see it in the chat, or would you like me to read it? I'll read it quickly. When scheduling for the fall term is being done, are there restrictions to room availability being imposed due to COVID? If so, how are roomless remote classes scheduled in terms of 9 to 5 course schedule? And it goes on with a little bit more detail, but I know Jim will be able to provide a great answer to that. Thanks, Peter, for the question. Jim?
Yeah, we are producing the timetable just as we would normally through the DCU. So if a class is identified as a daytime class, it's scheduled in the day. If it's identified as a class that the faculty would prefer offered in the evening or on weekends, we schedule it in that way. And of course, we're paying attention to course combinations and the complexity of trying to avoid student scheduling conflicts. So it's pretty complex, Peter, but we're not restricting remote classes to the 9 to 5. It would entirely depend on how the faculty schedulers have identified the time, whether it's a daytime or evening class, I guess.
So the issue is I'd like to do a remote class in the fall because there's no indication that we'll be back to normal. But we can't schedule it because there's no appropriate room sizes available, even though the room size is, non-existent. So there's some wrinkle in the system still that doesn't allow you to schedule remote classes in a 9 to 5 schedule if there's no physical space available.
Well, there's lots of ways we could manage that just by communicating with us, Peter. If there's, a need to have a class in remotely identified as remote, we can try and work that out. But essentially we can't run two different timetabling systems at the same time. We just don't have the resources or the capacity to do something like that. But we make adjustments to the schedule all the time. So, you know, if you want to have a chat with me, or, you know, let me know what class it is and how you'd like it to be scheduled, I can look into that for you.
Great, thank you.
I'm looking for hands. I don't see any yet, and nothing in the chat. While we're giving people a chance, I wondered, Tom McIntosh, if you would be prepared just to share your screen again. There was one graphic that really leapt out at me when I looked at that deck, and that was, I believe, the anxiety map. There were the two provincial outlines, I think maybe page 3 or page 4 if memory serves. But if you look at the map of the prevalence of anxiety, it seems as if there's a particular concentration in Regina, which is understandable, but also in the corridor out along the Trans-Canada to the Manitoba border. And I just wondered, that's the one there on the left. Do you know what that means and why it would be showing along the Trans-Canada toward the border?
You're talking about this here,
sorry, here I'm pointing to the screen in my office, which is
yeah.
not new at all. No, on the left-hand side, the high anxiety since COVID, and you've got high anxiety reaching out toward the Manitoba border, basically along the Trans-Canada.
That's actually, it's a bit of an artificial element based on the borders for those different regions are amalgamations of former health authorities, right? Which is how we could divide up the data. So that's a bit of an anomaly. It's basically more, it's more rounded out than that. It's not that there's something specific along the Trans-Canada. It's an artifact of the way the data got grouped.
Gotcha. Thank you very much. That makes all kinds of sense, and it's a bit of a relief. Thanks. Yeah. I'm looking again for questions, and I'll just get back here. Are there any hands? Not seeing any hands yet. Dean Mulhall writes, on a lighter note, is there any possibility that Common Ground might be reopened on a limited hours basis for those staff and students who are currently working, studying on campus? I'd ask Dave or John Smith or Bettina or anyone on that side who would like to answer that.
Hey, I'll go ahead and give it a shot first, and I can answer on a broad basis first, is that we don't plan on opening any university food service operations until we've had a chance to let all of our other partners open first. So we're not anticipating anything until September. So the Common Ground would fit into that. We think in the spirit of good relations, Luther is operating right now. I know that's a little bit inconvenient, but they're definitely have a great opportunity to scale up. And in fact, I'm sure they're heavily subsidizing it just to keep what they've got going now. And we've got other partners like Extreme PETA in operation that needs business to survive. And of course, our own student union, the OWL operation, which would open before, and places like Henderson. So we've, in conversations with those partners, committed to them that we won't open university food services. We'll be the last one to open up, and Common Ground fits in that. So hopefully that answers the question.
Thanks, Dave. And we spoke briefly, I think, at a previous town hall about Extreme PETA, which is open. I was in there yesterday again, just buying a pita, asked Jigger, the franchisee, the owner, how he was doing. And at that point of the day, at about, I think it was 1:15 yesterday, roughly, he had reached sales that represented barely half of what he needs to take in on a daily basis just to break even. So that's the kind of challenge that he is facing. And again, together with many food service providers throughout the city. So if you can stop by and buy a coffee there, Dean, that would be great. Any other any questions or comments? Help me out if I'm missing anybody. Not seeing anything. Well, if that's it, we needn't prolong it unnecessarily. Maybe just a couple of really brief concluding comments. Renewed thanks to everyone. For those of you who did not see the Note to Campus this morning, I do want to recognize and honor the memory of Teresa Stevenson. The work that she did with her husband and her family at Chili for Children over the years has been truly, truly remarkable, and resulted in a major award from the university, which her son accepted on her behalf last year. She was a great lady, and if you don't know about her, maybe just look her up, do a Google News search, and you'll learn something about a really remarkable member of the community who did so much for vulnerable children. And as Andrew said, it's pretty difficult to predict anything right now. There's so many conflicting streams and currents. The vaccine is so promising, and then we have the supply chain interruptions and the Pfizer retooling in Belgium and distribution problems and questions about new variants being more contagious and potentially in some cases more dangerous, all kinds of things going on. Do we know where we're going to be by the fall? No, we don't. Do we have a great deal of confidence that May, June, and July, August, as previously discussed, will be essentially as we are now with perhaps a slight increase in numbers? We're fairly confident of that, though given the fluidity of the pandemic, we will need to react if we must. We're talking about a decision date for the fall term in conjunction with our partners, the University of Saskatchewan, Sask Poly, the regionals. That conversation will be had again at the next sector meeting, which I believe is toward the end of next week. It's just perhaps a little bit more uncertain now than it was even 6 weeks ago about exactly where we'll land. And I don't want to pretend that we know where we're going to be in the fall. All I can say is that as soon as we are able and confident to make an announcement that we feel is an appropriate announcement, we will do so. And Risa said, is it possible to have a fall decision date that precedes the opening of registration? Jim, can you remind me of the date that registration for the fall opens?
Yeah, fall registration opens on March the 2nd.
Risa, the quick answer to your question, possible, but I would say at this point, not likely. Just don't know. Okay. March the 2nd is just over a month away. I'm trying to be as frank as possible. And Gurjinder asks, are the figures of the students availing gym and online fitness classes available? Harold, if you're still there, yes, there's the answer. We've been tracking that, and the Dean, Gurjinder, will get you an answer if you send him an email. Okay, I don't see any more questions. We're about 7 minutes off the end of the period, but thank you to everyone. Please stay well, please take care of yourselves, take care of the people around you. And together, as you've seen, the work that is being done by people in this campus community is amazing. And together, we will get through this, and we will come out the other side stronger as a campus community and a university than ever before. So thanks so much, and have a great weekend, everyone. Bye-bye.